Hello friends, it's Kristie Marcotte. Today I'm sharing the cards I made using Paper Rose's Industrial Paper Collection. This is a 24-sheet single-sided A5 paper collection. There's 2 of each design and I'm just going to flip through these really quickly. This collection is different than anything I've ever used before, so I thought it would be really fun to try. I really like that the A5 size, this is an Australian company, you're able to easily get 2 A2 size card backgrounds from 1 sheet of paper. When I started the collection, I was planning on making just 5 or 6 card designs, but I ended up finishing off the entire paper pad. So go ahead and get started with card design number 1. I will be making multiple cards of each design, but I'll only show the process of assembling one. For this first card, I wanted to use some yellow cardstock for layering, but I felt that yellow was way too bright. So I'm going to tone it down using some Distress Oxide ink. This is the black soot color. I only added ink to the very outside edge since the center is all going to be covered up. I'll put some ATG tape on the back and add this panel onto that yellow cardstock. So you can see how bright that is on the opposite side. Then I'm going to layer this panel on some black cardstock as well. I'll put my card front onto a card base. And all of my cards are American A2 size, so 5.5 inches by 4.25 inches. Since most of the pattern papers are very busy in this collection, I'll just add some smaller embellishments and images. For a lot of my cards, I'm using Paper Rose's Cogs, or I call them gears, one of their die sets. And I will have links provided in the description box for all of the products used in this video. Paper Rose is located in Australia and they ship internationally, but you can also purchase their products in the US. And I will have links for both places in the description box. I cut out 3 different gears. I used some pearlescent gray cardstock. And I just have my acrylic block sitting on top to let that glue dry. Just want to make sure it's going to stay in place. For the sentiment, I'm using the So Extra Black 1.0 sentiment strips. So I have a few of them to form the sentiment, "You are capable of brilliant things." Then to finish off the card, I'm using some Nuvo crystal drops. This is the Ebony black color, and I'll use that quite a bit on several of the cards. So there is my finished card, and I was able to make a total of 4 using that background paper. Now moving on to card design number 2. I have 2 different pattern papers. Most of the cards I'm only using 1 pattern paper, but there are a few that I'll combine multiple. I'm going to layer this background piece on some green pearlescent cardstock. I did cut out the center so I can save it for another card, and just added some scrap cardstock in that cutout area. Then I'll layer this piece on some black cardstock. And most of my matted layers are an additional 1/8 of an inch. I used Paper Rose's Banners 1 die set. Cut out this honeycomb metal. I'm not really sure what the name of all these metals are. I'm not an industrial metal kind of person. I'm going to use that same green pearlescent paper to put a strip across the card. I will add some scrap cardstock on the left and right side where it goes over that banner. I like to keep everything at the same level. For the sentiment on this card, I'm using the big black and white sentiment sheets. So I cut out this large black and white sentiment, "Always say yes to new adventures." I layered that on some black cardstock, and now I'll cut some more scrap pieces of cardstock to keep everything level. So I'll put that larger piece on the lower side, and I just hold it up to my card so I can see where I need to add those layers. I'll put some Barely Art liquid adhesive on the back and adhere it to the card. I cut out a few more of the gears. This time I used some black mirror cardstock. Adds a really lovely shine. I like that this Cogs set has several different sizes of gears, and it has some of the pieces that go on the inside, so you could leave those out or you could add them in. Lots of different options. Just adhering them down using some liquid adhesive. Then I'll pull out the black Nuvo drops, add a couple to the upper left-hand corner, then a few in the lower right-hand corner. So there is my finished card, and I was able to make 4. For the other 2 cards, I used a different sentiment since all those sentiment sheets only have 2 of each sheet. So moving on to card design number 3. I'm using this fun distress pattern paper for the background. I decided to pull out my decal trimmer by Tim Holtz. I'm gonna cut the very end of it. I'll keep the other 3 sides straight, but I thought it'd be fun to have that decal edge at the very bottom. I already used the decal trimmer on the edge of the brown cardstock. So I'm just gonna layer those 2 pieces. I'll fill in that gap that I cut out to save for another project. And then I'll layer this piece on some black cardstock. Black cardstock works really nicely with this collection since it goes with everything in it. I'll put my card front onto a card base. For the sentiment on this card, I'm using the word thanks. This is one of Paper Rose's sentiment dies. I cut it out twice, once out of some blue cardstock and then again out of that same pearlescent brown cardstock. I'm gonna layer them on top of each other, having that blue cardstock peek out above the brown pearlescent cardstock. Then I decided I'm going to pop this up using some thin foam squares. And I'm using the black color. That way you're not going to have that bright white peeking out from behind. I'll trim down that foam dimension, and I did speed this portion up quite a bit. I'm not that fast at adhering all those little foam pieces. Remove all the release paper and then adhere it to my card on the right hand side. Looks very plain at the moment, but I will be adding more. I use another one of the sentiment cut aparts. So my whole sentiment is thanks for all you do. I cut out some more of the gears, this time in blue cardstock. I'll adhere 2 of them to the left of the sentiment and then that small gear to the right above the word thanks. I'm just using liquid adhesive to adhere those all in place. Then to finish off the card, I'll add just a few of the Nuvo black crystal drops. So there is my finished card, and I was able to make 4 using this background pattern paper. I did use some different sentiments underneath the word thanks. Now moving on to card design number 4. And this is the only time I'm going to bring in a card sketch. This is by OWH. It's number 218. It's one of my favorite sketches and I use it quite a bit. I have one pattern paper that I wanted to feature for that larger rectangle. So it's a bunch of gears in that rust and greenish color. The background paper is some green cardstock. I was trying to find a color that matched those green gears. And then for the strip that goes across the card, it's a little more of a brownish red rust color. Layering everything with some black cardstock, adding that scrap piece of cardstock on the back of this gear paper, just the upper side where it goes over that strip. Put my card front onto a card base. I love the clean design of this card sketch, and it's perfect for featuring a pattern paper, or you could put an image in that larger rectangle. It's almost a square, but it is a rectangle. For the sentiment, I'm using the word hello, doing the same that I did on the previous card, cut it out twice and layered them together. I have some of that green pearlescent cardstock and then some black mirror paper. So that black mirror paper is popping out just a little bit above the green pearlescent cardstock. It's hard to see in the video, but this little banner piece is some leftover pattern paper. It has a very dark distressed look with some greens and blacks on it. I'm going to adhere the hello sentiment on top of that. And I did layer that banner on some more black specialty cardstock. I cut out 3 tiny circle die cuts. Use some more of that black mirror cardstock so it adds some shine, and just adhere them to the card. I'll put a scrap piece of cardstock on the left side of this sentiment banner and then glue it down using some liquid adhesive. So this card is nice and flat, be easy to send in the mail without paying any extra postage. And there is my finished card. I was able to make 4 using this sketch. I just flipped the sentiment color and that strip going across the back on 2 of the cards. Now moving on to card design number 5. This pattern paper is very unique. I'm not sure what it's supposed to be a picture of. It kind of reminds me of a piano, except that the keys would need to be all the same length, and they're obviously not, but I thought it was really fun. Just layer that on some black cardstock. Then I used Paper Rose's sentiment strip dies, cut out 1 in black and then the thinner in this green cardstock. I do have some double-sided tape on the back to adhere those in place. Then I'll just attach it to the upper portion of the card, trim off the extra. I'm going to bring in some more of the sentiment cut aparts and also those gears. I used some silver mirror cardstock for the gears this time. I like to bring in the specialty cardstock just to add a little something extra to the cards. I'm putting liquid adhesive on the back and I'll adhere the gears toward the left side of the card. Most of my cards are fairly simple. I think with this fun pattern paper, you really don't need to add a lot of extra. I used 3 different sentiments. I'm going to put them all at a different angle. So it's going to be, hello, handsome, how are you? And then finishing off the card, add some more of the Nuvo black crystal drops. Put a couple around the sentiment and 2 in the upper left-hand corner. So there is my finished card, and I was able to make 4 using this background pattern paper. I did use some different sentiments for the other cards. Now moving on to card design number 6. I have some blue and black distress pattern paper for the background. I'm going to layer that on some black pearlescent cardstock. Again, cut out that center so I could save it for another project. Fill it in with some scrap cardstock. I'll put my card front onto a card base. And for this card, I decided to have some of the white card base showing. I think it goes well with that little bit of white in the pattern paper. I added a strip of blue cardstock across the bottom portion. And one of the pattern papers has all these different metal grates, like manhole covers. So I cut all of them out. Most of them are circles. There's a few that are squares and other shapes. You could fussy cut out all of those images. I found it easier to use circle dies though for the circle shapes. I have 5 different images. I'm just stacking them, layering them together on the left side. I will add those scrap pieces of cardstock on certain areas underneath the images, just trying to keep everything level. Since this is pattern paper and I'm gluing it down, I don't want to have that noticeable dip or dent from all the other layers underneath. So I'll add 1 more small layer underneath this last little piece. I'm gluing everything down with some liquid adhesive. I decided not to pop up any of the images. Once the images are all in place, I can add a sentiment. I'm using the Uplifting Type paper collection by Paper Rose. So there's a very large assortment of different sentiments included in this pack. And I will have links for all the different sentiment strips that I use in this video. I put some scrap cardstock on the right side of that sentiment strip, and I am going to pop it up using the thin foam squares. I just had to cut them down so they'd fit on this little piece. Remove the release paper, and then I'll adhere it to the lower side of that blue cardstock strip. For embellishments on this card, I decided to use Paper Rose's Clear Crystal Shaker Mix. It'll add a little bit of sparkle, but I like how the color will blend in with the background since they are clear. I'm using an embellishment wand to help pick those up after I put a drop of glue down, and that glue will dry clear, as you can see on my finished cards. So I was able to make a total of 4. On 2 of them, I used some different images. Now moving on to card design number 7. For the background paper, this is a very busy looking design. It looks like the inside of a machine with all those different gears and mechanics. I layered it on some silver mirror cardstock and then again on some black cardstock. I'll put my card front onto a card base. This is also a very simple card. With so many fun pattern papers, I'm trying not to cover up most of the design. I'm going to add a thin strip of black cardstock to the lower portion of the card, and this is going to anchor the sentiment. I have a stitched rectangle die cut, and I felt that it was too white, so I'm using some more of the black soot distress oxide ink and going around the edges, and I'll put a little bit in the center, just to take away that really bright look. I'll be stamping a sentiment in the lower left-hand corner. This is the Hello stamp set, and I only had to ink it up once, which was really nice. I did use my mini Misty. I wanted to make sure I had a really solid impression. I'm going to layer the white die cut on some black cardstock, and then before adhering it to the card, I will put that scrap piece of cardstock on the upper portion where it goes over that thin black strip. Put some liquid adhesive on the back and then adhere it to the lower right-hand corner. So it is a fairly large box, but I still feel you can see most of that pattern paper. For the rest of the sentiment, I use the Hello die from Paper Rose. I cut it out from some black mirror cardstock, put some liquid adhesive on the back and centered it on that sentiment box. For finishing touch, I'm going to add a couple small banners in the upper left-hand corner. And I did use Paper Rose's banner die. I just cut the very ends off. I have the first banner with that same silver mirror cardstock and then one in black. So there is my finished card, and I was able to make 4 using this pattern paper for the background. Now moving on to card design number 8. I'll be using one of my favorite dies from Paper Rose. This is their comic strip frame die. This is perfect for using up those last pattern paper scraps. So I cut out the frame from some black cardstock. I flipped it over. Now I'm adding some 2-inch double-sided tape to the back side. I'll flip it over again. I do have a little extra tape going off the side, so I'm just going to trim that away. This is super sticky tape, so it does keep sticking to my hand. Now I can start inlaying all of the pattern paper pieces that I cut out using this die. So it's just like assembling a little puzzle. I like to use the double stick tape on the back so I don't have to mess with liquid adhesive. Now you can see a little bit of that white backing from the tape, but I'm going to make sure that's not going to show. So remove the release paper, just tucking in that edge of the adhesive, and then I'm adding another piece of black cardstock. So now you can't see any of that white showing. And I'll put this panel onto a card base. Now this is slightly smaller than an A2 size card. Instead of 4 1/4 inches, it's about 4 1/8. So I did trim down my card base so it would fit. I'll add a few more of the metal grate images. I'll put 3 of them on the left-hand side. And I'll just layer them slightly. I cut out the word hello, and I've already adhered it with that background piece. I really like the look of having that second color behind. And then I'll add the little sentiment strip. So the whole sentiment is, "Hello, you make me smile." Then finishing off the card, adding some more of the black Nuvo drops. Put a couple in the upper left-hand corner and then a few around the sentiment. And there is my finished card. I was able to make a total of 8 using this background die. For 3 of the cards, I used some of the gear dies since I didn't have enough of the metal grate image pieces left over. Now moving on to card design number 9, and this is my final card design. I'm using the yellow pattern paper that has partial numbers printed on the back. I mean, they're very large numbers, so you really don't see the full number. I'm going to layer this on some black cardstock, and then I'll add this panel onto a card base. Leave that 1/8 of an inch of the white card base showing. I'm going to add 2 banners toward the left side, but I wanted to tone down this bright yellow cardstock first. So I'm using some more of the Distress Oxide ink in the black soot. Gives it more of a distressed look and it matches with that pattern paper. So I'll adhere that to the left, and then the smaller banner I use some gray pearlescent cardstock. I'll add that scrap piece of cardstock to the right side of this banner before adhering it in place. I thought I had it down, but then it slipped, so I did have to reposition it. Then using another one of the cut aparts, this is from the big black and white sentiment sheets. I'll first layer that sentiment cut apart on some black mirror cardstock. And I did notice the upper right hand corner of that banner was pulling away, so I put just a drop of liquid adhesive. I want to make sure it's not going to pull away later. Then I'll adhere the sentiment. This is "Every little thing is gonna be all right." I decided to add some more of the gears. Been having so much fun with the gears. They just work perfectly with this pattern paper. So I'll add 3 of them to the left of the sentiment, and I cut those out using some of the black mirror cardstock. And final finishing touch, adding some more of the Nuvo drops. I'll put a couple in the upper left-hand corner, 1 around the gears, and then 2 below the sentiment. So there is my finished card. I was able to make 4 with that yellow pattern paper, and then I had 1 more pattern paper, so a total of 6 using this card design. For the other 2 cards, I used some brown pearlescent cardstock and also blue cardstock for the gears. Now here are all the leftover pattern paper scraps. Just 2 pattern paper pieces and then a few more of those cut aparts. Not a whole lot left. Now since I wasn't planning on finishing off this paper pad, I didn't keep track of how many sheets of solid cardstock I used. I generally average between 15 and 20 sheets though. And you can see black was my main cardstock color. I also used several different colors of specialty cardstock. I made a total of 42 cards using Paper Rose's Industrial Paper Collection. This was a really fun collection to use. Not a drop of pink, but that's okay. I always have to think of who I'm giving the cards to since these aren't for me. So it's nice to have a variety. I will have links provided in the description box for this paper collection and the products used in this video. These are affiliate links. I will earn a small commission when you make a purchase using those links at no additional cost to you. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.